Here we have Back to the Future Dice Through Time setup, and what you're going to be doing in this game is working together to fix events in the time continuum, to gather items and return them to where they should be. Each row represents a different timeline, and each column is the same location in the various timelines, though it may have different names. The train bridge becomes the Hill Valley High School, which is the same for 2 years, and then it becomes Hilldale in the future. Marty's house starts as a saloon, becomes Lou's Cafe before it's Marty's house, and then becomes a Cafe 88 in the future. Clock Tower is always Clock Tower, Brown Mansion and Blacksmith and the Schoolyard, Farm, Twin Mines Mall, etc, etc. Each location will have its own Biff on it. Biff needs a good punching every now and again. You can't complete events if Biff is there. Each player will take the colour DeLorean of their chosen colour and place it on the same colour event timeline at the clock tower. They'll also take 4 dice and a player board. The player boards explain all the dice results and the turn order and give you 2 slots to store your items. You can only have 2 items at a time. First thing to happen is you will draw a number of events depending on the player count. Here we can see this event belongs in Hilldale in 2015, and it is the McFly family has rehydrated pizza. This is the 2 icons that are needed to solve it, and we simply place that in its correct place. If more than one event comes up for the same location on the board, you will just stack them up, and all those dice icons must be resolved at one time. Sometimes you get an event like this, immediately reduce the out of time tracker by 2. That would be a really handy one. And sometimes these events will also, where's this clock tower there, will also move Biff when they have the chicken icon on. So here we have clock tower again, so this one would go here and it would move Biff to it. After you've done the amount of events for your player count, you will all roll your dice. Then, using those dice, you will perform your actions. So, a flux capacitor lets you stay in the same location but move in the years. So the orange player can move down to this location here. They've spent that, so then that goes. They can punch Boff. He's going to move away, and then they have 2 results left. You can spend any single die to move to an adjacent location in the same year. You can spend any 2 matching dice to use any result. Here we're a bit stuck because we've got 1 fist which we need, but we also need the spanner. You can leave dice for other players, but they must be left in the past. So if Blue had gone first and, for example, left a spanner here, we could then find that in the future, use that and use the fist to fix the event. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. The lightning lets you re-roll any unspent dice of your choice, which is okay. You can spend to move to any location in your current year. This moves Biff, and this removes any paradox tokens, any 2 from anywhere on the board. So you'll be doing this, and when you fix an event, you return this to the board, and you get an item from that year, and this item will tell you what it is and where it needs to be returned to. So this needs to be returned to the clock tower in 1885. When you successfully return an item, you get to move the out of time marker back, and you also get an Einstein token. The out of time marker is what you need to be watching, because if that gets all the way to the end, you lose the game. Einstein tokens are simply bonus tokens that can be used by anyone. They go on there, and then anyone can use that as a fist. When you've cleared each year from its items, and items are numbered depending on player count, you will win the game. If you ever team up on a year, you are allowed to do so, but you will cause a paradox, and this will skip forwards too. At the end of the round, you count how many locations how many events are on each location. This only counts as one event, even though it's got 2 cards. So it'd be 1, 2, and this will move forward 2, and then a paradox token will be placed on each one. If they've already got paradox tokens, they don't move any further. However, they will move an extra space when it comes to counting the events in years where that have the most events. So you'll move this further on 1 if there are paradox tokens already there. That is how you play Back to the Future Dice Through Time. It's also worth noting that the game comes with a really good insert which stores all the DeLoreans. These player boards fit nicely on top of here to keep everything from moving around, and the back of the board, like in Horrified from the same publisher, has a little note on the back so that when you first open the game you're presented with that, which is always a nice touch. The rules are fairly straightforward. I had to do a bit of flicking back and forth considering how short they were, but ultimately they do make sense. Hi, I'm Nick from Board Deck and Dice. Today we are talking about Back to the Future Dice Through Time. Dice Through Time is a dice rolling cooperative game with pick up and deliver elements. As you've seen, you will be moving up and across the board trying to solve events which then give you items which must be delivered to their correct time period and location. If Biff's there, you've got to give him a good old punch to move him along, and then you will get rewards in the form of Einstein Tokens. The game is fairly simple to play, and the time travel comes through your moving, which is quite abstracted out. You're either moving rows, which is staying in the same time period, or columns, which is no, the rows are kind of, but if you move up the column, you know what I mean, you've seen it, which is through time to the same location. You can leave dice in the past, which the other players can pick up in the future, which is a neat little mechanic. And yeah, it kind of whizzes along and gets more and more tense as more and more events come out on the board, and if you don't solve them, you're on the risk of having events clump up and then be harder to solve. And then your items that you have to deliver. There are a few little niggles that stop it from being a must-own, in my opinion. The theme works for the most part, but when multiple events come out, I know it's like the event getting worse and you're going through time, so the events can get worse. But unless you're a die-hard Back to the Future fan, the events coming out, you know, you look at them and yeah, you remember the part from the film, but then you've got to put them on their location, and because the locations are the same location but they have different names, it's not always easy. I find it really difficult sometimes to find. I was looking at the year and that would have a colour code, but then sometimes with the items the colour code would be different on one bit of the card to the other, and it's just this little hang up in gameplay when placing events and working out where item cards needed to be delivered. The names of the places whilst true to the film, and always in the same column, it just was hard to find at times. Also, the dice, I love dice games, but this is one of the harshest ones in that you just roll and you see what you get and then you use it or you don't. And I just wish that they'd added a couple of re-rolls in. Maybe it makes it too easy, or maybe they'd made the lightning that you can re-roll all your dice. But the having to use the lightning as a re-roll, it's like you're wasting 2 dice potentially if you don't get what you want. And I think I personally will always struggle with these games where you only get 1 roll and then you have to use that. I like it when it's put back on you and it said, well, you can take what you've got or you can re-roll, but then you lose what you had. I like that kind of risk taking. And it just seems odd that it's not in this game. The components are brilliant, the gameplay is easy, it will work for families, it will work for children. If you're a fan of Back to the Future and you want a game you can play with your family together, where you can do a co-op and then you can watch films afterwards or before, then there's a lot to like in Back to the Future. it's just not, it's not one of those games that I consider a must-have. It's nearly there, you know, it's a couple of decisions off, but we're talking, you know, 7-ish out of 10 rather than your 8 or your 9 out of 10. I think for the price, you're getting a lot of game, there's a lot of variety in there. The pick up and deliver mechanic is one I enjoy, and it's a good game to teach family members and children that mechanic of getting something and taking it somewhere else. And the game is zippy, so that's really good. And they have thrown in some time travel, timey-wimey stuff, I believe is the correct quote, where, you know, if you meet the other person, that's going to have impact on rushing the time track that you can't let to get to the end even further. And yeah, so there's a nice level of decisions, but for me that dice issue is the biggest thing. So if you're someone who doesn't like just rolling the dice once and then resolving those results, then there's not much mitigation in this game unless it comes through random events or you use a lightning dice, spend a lightning dice to roll another dice, meaning you've potentially wasted 2. Other than that, it looks great, the components are great, you'll get your own little DeLorean, the standy bits work, the cards reference films, they're not art from the films, they're kind of stylized in the same style of the box art, kind of this angular art, I don't know what it's called. So I think a lot of people will really like this. And it's a good one for people who are moving away, who are not moving away from, but who are journeying from your more kind of mass market games to more gamery games. So that's my thoughts on Back to the Future, Dice Through Time. I keep looking down there to check the title because there is another Back to the Future game coming. Thanks for watching Zatu. Do like our videos, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. And we also do a shed load of live content on Facebook. So do follow us on Facebook too. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.